maybe you're even one of those people who's just afraid of death. But you know what's really funny? More times than not, you'll hear people say they might rather die than get up in front of other people and have to speak. But it's okay, because being afraid of public speaking is good and normal for you. Why is it normal? Well, one, it means you're basically just like everybody else. It is completely normal, and pretty much everybody else gets a little nervous and sometimes really scared about getting up in front of other people and having to make a presentation. So that's okay. Why is it good for you though? Well, fear gives you focus. And with that focus, you're going to be laser sharp because you've got to try and make sure that you get right through what it is you're going to do. But when you overcome your fear, it also gives you a greater sense of accomplishment. And it's that sense of accomplishment that you're not going to get with something that didn't scare you. Like if you do really good on a math exam, you feel accomplished, but you might not have been scared about it because you studied and you were prepared and you knew all the answers going into it. But when you overcome something that really scares you, like for some people, public speaking, and you overcome that, you have done something really great and you really feel extra proud of yourself for having overcome it. Public speaking doesn't mean that you're doing like I'm doing right now, where you're teaching it in a classroom or even presenting in front of hundreds or even thousands of other people. Public speaking really starts when you're just talking to someone else and listening, and it'll grow from there. So you've got some ways that you're going to engage in public speaking in your life on a regular basis. Right now, imagine somewhere like the dinner table, where of course you're supposed to be eating, but I remember in my house, we have conversations around the dinner table. When I was a kid, as an adult, we talk about our day, we talk about what's going on in our lives, and you're talking in front of other people. That's public speaking, speaking in front of other people. It's also answering questions in a class, because if there's other people around and you answer a question, well, you've just spoken publicly in front of these other people. So maybe public speaking isn't as scary as you thought. Public speaking could be something like you leading the Pledge of Allegiance for other people in your class, at a sporting event, or wherever that might be. Public speaking could be you participating in a play at school. And you might think to yourself, but wait a minute, I've memorized a script and I'm acting out a role. Yeah, but you're still doing it for other people to see it. So that's still public speaking. Another way that you'll commonly speak in public will be reading a passage from a book for other people to hear. It's something that maybe is just at the library at reading time, at church when somebody gets up to read from the lectern, or some other situation where you get asked to read what's going on in your classroom. So that's some ways that you already have the opportunity to engage in public speaking without even having to get out on a big platform as it is right now. Public speaking is important. It's one of the reasons why it's good that we're having this conversation with you now, because public speaking is one of those things that if you can do it and you can do it well, you're going to stand out against the crowd. Most people don't try to overcome their fears of anything. I mean, think about it. We talk about people being scared of snakes or spiders. What do? They stay away from snakes and spiders. I was talking to somebody just today who didn't want to go into the basement of their workplace because they're scared of rats, and they saw a rat down there. And they talked about it being this big, and it was hairy, and it was black, and it had these big fangs on it. Well, that sounds pretty scary to anybody. I don't care who you are. You talk about a rat that's going to be this big. I mean, that's more like the size of a small dog, not a little rodent that's going to be running around in a basement. I'm going to be scared of that thing. So if you're that person, though, who faces your fears, you're going to get more done in your life. You're going to accomplish more. You're going to be a part. You're going to be greater than the people around you because you're applying yourself towards whatever those things are. The other side of it is most people don't actually try to get better at public speaking. It's that thing that scares them so much. They're like, I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm not trying to be the CEO at my job. I'm not trying to be the one making all the stuff. I'm not trying to be the teacher in the classroom. I'm not trying to be the priest up there on the stage. I'm not trying to be a performer where I have to be in front of people. So I'm just not going to worry about it. They might have to take a class on it when they get into college, but after that, they are done with it. They don't want anything to do with it. Having to read their book report in front of their classroom in 8th grade was enough for them. If you're that person, though, who makes the effort to get past that, you're going to do really well. Another reason why public speaking is so important is because you're going to have a career. You're going to do something in your life that is how you make your living. And part of how you get those jobs is through an interview. Well, an interview is you public speaking. You're engaging with one or more people who are across the table from you, across the room from you these days, because we can't be within 6 feet of each other. But that's public speaking. You're going to be asked to present yourself in a way that convinces somebody they should give you a job. And I can tell you, as somebody who has to hire people, that the person who presents themselves well is much more likely to get the job than maybe even somebody who might be more qualified but doesn't present very well. So when you learn to present yourself well, that skill of public speaking, you give yourself a better shot at getting that job that you want to have. And then when you have that job, who do you think they look to promote? They look to the person who leads other people because they know how to present well. They know how to talk to other people. They have the communication skills to lead people, to manage teams, and to grow in the company or in their career field to do great things. And so that's the person that people are going to turn to. Imagine if your school teacher, your boss, your parents were like, hey, can you do that thing that I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. That's not the kind of communication that's going to really propel you in life. But if you're that person who doesn't even have to really be a people person, but can present well, you're going to be the one that people are going to turn to when they need leadership, they need guidance, and the people who are watching that are going to say, that's the kind of person we need to invest in to build up in our company, build up in our field, and make them successful because people want to follow them. And that's going to be you as you learn how to grow in your ability to speak publicly. The other way it's going to help you is just generally in your life. When you can speak in public, you can speak anywhere. And that means you're going to be a better communicator in every aspect of your life. Your family, your friends, your church, your social groups, your neighborhood. You're going to be that person that people want to talk to because they know that you're the person who communicates with them clearly and in a way that they want to hear what you have to say. So public speaking is going to help you in so many ways. Now, we're not going to be able to cover everything about public speaking while we're here in this short little class, but this is going to help you to have a good foundation for what public speaking should look like. But before we get more into what it looks like, let's talk about how the fact that public speaking is more than just what you say. There are a lot of nonverbal cues, things that you don't say, that are also part of your message. And part of that is you've got to keep in mind, your nonverbal cues should match your message. What do I mean by that? I mean, if I'm coming up and I'm going to give you a very serious talk, but I'm wearing a tie-dye t-shirt and a Santa Claus hat in the middle of July, you're probably not going to expect that what I have to say is going to be very serious. At the same time, if I show up for a comedy routine and I'm dressed like I'm going to a funeral, you're probably not going to think I'm very funny. If I'm supposed to be somebody that you should listen to on good hair care, but I don't brush my hair anyway because I don't have any. But let's just say I did. And I don't keep a good haircut and I don't brush my hair or at least trim my beard, then you're going to go, well, wait a minute, they're not really presenting like somebody who can talk about this sort of a thing. So you got to think about your grooming as part of your message. You also have to think about the clothes that you wear. Now, all you can see right now is that I have on this jacket here and I have on this spiffy shirt, but you don't see the swim trunks I'm wearing underneath or the flip-flops that I don't actually have on because I'm not wearing flip-flops right now. Actually, truth be told, I'm wearing slacks and I'm standing here dressed as you could imagine I should be based on this, but the clothing that you wear should match the message that you're trying to present. So it's very important for you to make sure that that nonverbal communication is also appropriate. Dress to impress. If you think about if this is where the audience is going to be on their dress, go one step above them. If it's an event where they're going to be wearing short sleeve shirts, you wear the long sleeve shirt. If they're wearing long sleeve shirts, you wear the jacket. If they're wearing jackets, guys, put on your tie. But you see what I'm saying? Try and be one step above what you anticipate from your audience at the minimum. Make sure your message matches what they see. Also, the accessories that you wear. Now, you see right now, I'm not wearing any rings. I'm not wearing a watch or any jewelry, no necklaces hanging out, no earrings. I took them out 20 years ago. But the accessories that you wear, a ball cap, for instance, the jacket that you wear, those things should match what you have going on. If I'm at a funeral, but I'm wearing a psychedelic looking tie, that probably isn't going to match my message. So make sure that those match. Also, something that is still sort of nonverbal, but important in the verbal part of it, is that you do not speak in a monotone way so that nobody can tell what the emotion is that you're trying to convey. We would call that monotone. You're not really changing it. Your tone is not what you're saying, but it is part of what you're communicating. So keep that in mind. Also, you want to think about the pace at which you speak. Now, if I'm really excited about what I want to say, I'm probably going to say it a lot faster than something where I need to get really super serious. And so I need you to listen to me. So I'm going to slow down what I need to say to you. So make sure that the pace at which you're speaking is also going to match the message that you're trying to convey. Now, you have noticed maybe that I've been standing here straight. I'm not slouching over. I'm not leaning off to the side. Your posture, your body language is going to say a lot. The way that you carry yourself is going to speak to your audience. Eye contact is also going to speak to your audience. Now, you might say, but wait a minute, how can I have eye contact when I'm speaking over Zoom? The same way that I'm doing it right now, where I'm not actually looking over here at the screen that has all of your lovely faces on it. I am looking into the camera that is posted up here because that's how I can make eye contact with you. Maybe on a rare occasion, I'm going to glance down real quick just to make sure nobody's nodded off. Not that I'm going to judge you if you did, but we all know why Sandy turned off her camera. Because she's snoozing. That's okay. But eye contact is very important. Hand gestures and movements are also important. If I'm sitting here talking to you about something that's really exciting and really cool, but I keep my arms locked down to my side, that's going to kind of stand out. At the same time, if I'm talking to you about something really serious and I've got my arms flailing about, that's probably not going to match too much either. Your hand gestures should be natural. Don't force them. What would you be doing with your hands in a normal conversation? And do the same thing when you're speaking out in public. Being different from that, it's going to stand out a bit. Other things you want to think about when it comes to your hands is things you can do that are distracting. So if I'm sitting here talking to you and I'm, you know, trying to clean out my ear at the same time, well, that might get to you. Or if I'm sitting here and I keep touching my face, or like maybe because I'm getting a little warm, I just spend the whole time sitting here going, oh gosh, I just got to keep wiping off my head, but I'm still trying to talk to you. And you're distracted because I'm sitting here hitting myself with a towel in the face and not making hand gestures that are actually going to be talking to you. Now, if I had a podium that I was standing behind and I just keep tapping my hands around on the podium, that might be a little distracting as well. Or if I'm just standing up here and I've got my arms crossed, well, that might not necessarily be something too good, because you might think that I'm angry or I'm not really engaged in what's going on. So be aware of what's going on with your hands. I don't recommend putting them in your pockets. I don't recommend crossing them. If you want to put your hands together and your prayer sort of a style, just putting your hands together, let your fingers flex, that's fine. Just do whatever comes natural, and that will be the best thing for you. Now, another thing that some of us have to worry about is our facial expressions. So imagine that I'm trying to tell you that I'm really happy with you right now. Like, I'm really happy with you right now. Like, you believe I'm really happy with you right now, right? Well, maybe not. At the same time, like, I am so mad at you right now. I mean, I'm just furious. I am over the moon, just absolutely incensed by you. Probably not going to believe it much that way either. So you want to make sure your facial expressions match what it is you're trying to get across. Also, you might use things like visual aids. Now, let's say that I'm going to talk to you about being scared of snakes, and I pick up a snake and hold it up. Well, I want to make sure that the snake doesn't like start wiggling around and get to me, because then you're going to be more worried about this, what the snake's doing, than what I'm actually trying to tell you about what's going on. So make sure that your visual aids aren't going to be more distracting than the message you're trying to get across. Otherwise, people are going to walk out of what you had to say and they're going to go, man, did you see that snake bite him in the side of the neck? Yeah, what was he even talking about? I don't know, but the snake bit him. So keep your visual aid appropriate to whatever it is that you're trying to say. Also, you want to think about your location. Where are you? What does it look like around you? Is it matching what you're trying to say? So what I did is I put up a black sheet here behind me. So you don't know what's on this wall behind me, or if there's even a wall behind me. Maybe I'm in my backyard right now and this is just up in my yard. Or maybe I'm in my kitchen and right behind me is my stove. Or maybe I'm in my living room. Or maybe I'm in your garage and you just didn't know that I'm there. No, I'm not in your garage. It's okay. Don't go look. But make sure that what you're talking about matches the location where you're talking about it. It should also match the people who are going to be in there listening to it. I'm not going to have a conversation with you about something that maybe isn't appropriate to your context. And I'm also going to keep doing something distracting with my fingers just to see if you're catching on to those hand gestures while I'm trying to talk to you. But make sure that all of those things, you're like, wait a minute, how am I supposed to keep up with all of this? It's okay. You are going to get it because it's going to become natural for you. You're going to get to a point where the public speaking that you do is just part of how you communicate with people in everyday life. Public speaking is as much about you as it is what you say. Wait, what do I mean by that? We're still talking about some of this nonverbal stuff. But first we have to talk about why should I even listen to you? This is something we say is credibility. Like, what is it about you that I should listen to you? Or better question, why should you be listening to me right now? Like, who am I to come on here and tell you anything about public speaking, how to do it, why it's any good? What credentials do I have for that? Well, you don't know this yet, but I actually used to teach public speaking to university students. I did it for some time after I myself had been through the same class. And I have done public speaking for many years to small crowds of 2 or 3 people and crowds of over 5,000 people. So I have an extensive background and a history teaching about public speaking. So you might hear people sometimes joke and they'll say, those who can do and those who can't teach. But the truth is, for some things like public speaking, some of us can do both. And that's what we want you to be able to do too. Have the credibility to be able to stand up, and whatever it is you're talking about, people know you're someone we should listen to on that subject. But the other side of that is that you actually know what you're talking about. Like, you took the time to look up the information, to invest in yourself, to be the expert on that topic, whatever it might be. Think about this for a second. What are you a greater expert in right now than anyone else you know? You. Nobody knows you like you do. You know what you think. You know how you respond. You know what you feel. So when it comes to talking about you right now, you are the world's #1 expert on you. So you've already got something where you have credibility and knowledge to be able to talk about it. So that's a starting point for you. But what else can you learn about that then you'll be able to speak about? That's where that other knowledge becomes important. Establish your credibility as somebody who knows this, and then actually know it when you get out there and talk about it with other people, so that they can see that you're somebody who knows about this. Some of the ways that you can be known as someone who knows stuff is to not just know the positives of what you're trying to say, but also know what people might say to criticize it. Like, what might they be against on what you have to say? And then address that in the message that you're presenting. For instance, some people will tell you that you don't really need public speaking skills because really only about 10% of people in their life ever end up in a situation where they have to be in a public speaking situation. Now, that might sound like a valid criticism, but the truth is, I just made that up off the top of my head. But I just wanted to give you an example of how you can bring into your conversation and your presentation that you know what you're talking about by being able to present information that might challenge that and then respond to it. Now, we talked about the nonverbals. We talked about public speaking being more than just what you say, but public speaking is also about what you say. It is important when you are speaking in public or to other people that you stay on message. So like, imagine if 5 minutes ago, I started talking about the pet rabbit that I used to have when I was a kid. It was really cute. It was about this big. It was white. It was an albino rabbit, so it had red eyes. We kept it in a little cage in the backyard because I lived out in the country and it was okay to do that. Wait, hang on. We're talking about public speaking here. Let's stay on message. Make sure that you stay focused on what you're trying to talk about, because that's what the people want to hear. And you start getting off message, and then they don't remember why they're there to listen to you, and they're going to drift off into whatever they want to do as well. So you don't want to be that person. Stay on message. Use your notes. So some people will write out every word of what they want to say. That's a good place to start. It's helpful. It's easy to follow. As you get better at public speaking, you'll want to maybe write it out, but then turn it into a few keywords that you can follow, or maybe just quick sentences mixed in there that, you know, if you just start with that sentence, you can carry it past that, because remember, you know what you're up there to talk about. So your notes should look like something that you can follow. And maybe they only make sense to you, but they make sense to you, and you can use that, a little keyword that prompts you to the next thing. You also want to make sure that what you're talking about kind of follows a right order. So for instance, if we're going to talk about history, and we want to talk about the history of 9/11, we don't start with what's happened in 2016 to talk about what happened in 2001. We actually have to go back to 1992 and talk about what happened then that led all the way up to 2001, and then how things have worked their way up to where we talked about 2016, and then up to our present situation. So make sure that whatever you're talking about makes sense the way you present it. Imagine if I started my conversation with you on public speaking by talking about how to end your speech. Well, okay. And then instead of how to end the speech and moving on to what maybe I'm just going to go in reverse order, I go, well, this is how you end your speech, and then this is how you begin your speech. And then 3/4 of the way through your speech, this is what you should be talking about. But oh yeah, by the way, when you're preparing your speech, this is how it should be. Make sure what you're talking about follows an order that makes sense, so that if somebody's taking notes, they can go back to their notes and go, okay, this builds on this, and this builds on this, and this builds on this, and we conclude here because all these things came together to this point. Finally, we will talk about the end of your speech. When you are speaking in public, you want to end by telling me what should be different because I listened to what you had to say. Like, what changes now? Right now, what should be different about you now that you've heard what I have to say? Should it just be that you know a little bit more about public speaking? No, I'm not just here to share knowledge with you. I want two things from you when I finish up here in just a moment. I want a question from you. I want to know that you've thought about the information that I've shared with you, and that you want me to clarify some piece of that information. The second thing is I want you to plan right now. Think about this right now. What is the next opportunity you have to practice something related to public speaking? Can you go ahead and write out a script for something you want to talk about? Can you go ahead and pick a topic for what you'd want to talk about to start researching? Don't just pick it in your head though. I want you to be able to tell somebody else. Because when you tell somebody else, I'm going to do this, it holds you accountable to your word that you've given to somebody. So I want you to do those two things for me. I want you to be able to ask me a question here in just a few minutes that just clarifies or expands on something we've just discussed. And I want you to have a plan right now for being able to put this into practice, because knowledge without application is just a waste of time. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you for giving me the chance to be here. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. Thank you to my beautiful wife who's been off to the side over here, chowing down on her dinner and making sure that my notes went well. I'm especially grateful to her for helping me out. And now I'm going to open it up to you to ask me those questions.
So you mentioned how we have to address certain audiences differently. Like if it was a comedy speech, we need to appear to be someone would find funny. And it's a more serious speech, such as like a funeral, we want to appear serious and solemn and breathing almost. But I've known from previous experiences and from previous public speaking classes and lectures that the best way to start a speech is with a hook. And you have to pick a hook that works there in the proper environment. But sometimes that's really hard because everyone responds to a hook differently. Do you have any advice or suggestions on how to pick a hook that works properly through your speech as well as your audience?
That is a great question, Katie. Thank you for asking that. I assume your name is Katie because that's what it says on the little box of your screen. All right, you're giving me a head shake on that one, so I feel a little better about it. Next, you would have been like, no, my name is Aaron. Why are you calling me Katie? And that's okay. So a hook is very important. How did I start my presentation? Not the introduction where I said who I am. That was classroom housekeeping. I started with a question. I asked you, what are you afraid of? What scares you? Questions are great hooks because a question elicits an answer. Even if I don't want to hear your answer, I want you to start processing the question into an answer. So questions are always good. Stats, statistics, hard facts, data that might surprise somebody is also a good way, as long as it makes sense with what you're talking about. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be true if you're using it to catch their attention. For instance, let's say I am speaking on the dangers of cigarette smoke, but I start my speech by saying, a recent study found there is no link between negative health effects and smoking cigarettes. You're going to go, wait, what? And then I'm going to go, that's actually a lie. I just needed to make sure I had your attention. But that wouldn't make any sense if the topic of my subject was actually about bananas. You'd be like, what? I thought you were here to present on bananas. So make sure that whether it be a question or a stunning fact that doesn't even have to be true, just admit that it's not true, are great hooks as long as they also apply back to what you're talking about. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, where's the next question? I think half the class left as soon as I told them there'd be an assignment.
I was going to ask, how did you get used to public speaking?
That's a great question, Jake. It is Jake, right?
Yes.
Outstanding. How did I get used to public speaking? By doing it. There's no like you just kind of wake up one day and you drink the right Kool-Aid and suddenly you're good at it, or you're just used to it. You do it over and over and over again, and you eventually get used to it. And it's not like riding a bike though, where I learned how to do it when I was 6, and now that I'm older than 6, I can just jump on a bike and keep going. It's not one of those skills. It's one of those skills that you keep it going, and the more you do it, the more you're used to it. You think about brushing your teeth. Now, I'm assuming you brush your teeth at least once a day, and you probably do it as part of a routine. Like you get up in the morning and you hit the snooze button, throw your blanket back over your head. Mom comes in, shakes you, turns the light on, says, it's time to get up. I don't want to go to school today. Well, you're homeschooled, so you're already here. Okay. And so then you throw the covers back and you stumble into the bathroom, wiping your eyes, and you just kind of grab your toothbrush and make sure you put the toothpaste on it, and you just start brushing your teeth. It's just like a routine of something you do. Kind of like when you get the bowl out of the cabinet, and then you pour the cereal in, and then you pour the milk in. You almost don't even think about it because it's such a natural thing for you to do that. Public speaking is the same way. The more you do it, the more you'll get used to it. The great thing about public speaking, and this is something that took me a while to realize, it is harder to speak to 1 or 2 people than it is to 5,000. And it's because when you're in the smaller, a little bit more intimate environment, you feel a little more vulnerable because you're probably with people you know. And it almost feels weird to do it. I mean, like, imagine what it feels like for me right now that I am talking to a camera on top of a TV screen propped up in my dining room, actually. And my wife is sitting here who helped me with my notes, but I'm not like looking you in the eyes and talking to you. I'm looking into a camera that makes it look like I'm looking you in the eyes. And if it wasn't for the fact that I could look down right here at this monitor and see people on there, I would have no idea if I'm actually communicating to anybody. So it's a little weird. It's awkward. But the more you do it, the more you get used to it. I have to communicate with people a lot over camera, especially because of everything going on with COVID. So this has been a great experience for me to get used to doing this as well. And that's how you can continue to get better at it too. I had one person who had trouble looking at their camera and they kept looking at their screen. So it made it look like they're looking down. They're trying to look at the person, but they're actually looking at their screen. And so they're looking down, not at the screen. And so what I encouraged them to do was I said, find a little picture or a little toy and tape it on top of your camera, not where it blocks the lens, but just above it, and stare at that. Because as long as they're 6, 8, 10 inches away, if you're looking, within an inch or two up or down of your camera, it's still going to look like you're looking at your camera. But at least if you're looking at a picture of somebody or something that you can kind of feel like you're talking to someone or at something other than just staring into this weird circle thing in the middle of the camera. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Outstanding. Well, Sandy, it looks like everybody else ran away.
Allie has a walk she does every night at 7:30, and she texted me and told me she was very sorry that she had to leave early, but she's going to listen to the recording.
Outstanding. Well, tell Allie I'm going to expect a question to be emailed or messaged to me in some way for still being a part of this. And I'm going to have to know what her plan is to go ahead and start applying something where I didn't ask the others just because she had to go for a walk.
I will definitely make sure she knows that.
Outstanding. Well, any other questions from anyone?
I have a quick question, and you
Okay.
might have touched on this briefly already,
Are you
but
napping?
shh, don't tell my secrets. So you answered Jake's question as you became used to public speaking by just doing it over and over, to put it in a nutshell. But how did you overcome, or you might not have had any fear of doing it, but how does somebody that does have fear of even starting off and getting up in there in the first place, how do they get to a point where they can do it to become comfortable doing it?
And wow, what a great question. How do you face that fear? How do you stand up to it to even try to get used to public speaking? This is one of the things that I used to enjoy the most when I taught public speaking to university students, because you can't fake your way through it. When people would get up at the beginning of the semester to start their class, they always had to do an informative speech on themselves. So they had to get up and spend 2 minutes introducing themselves, talking to us about how they ended up at that school, where they were from, what they were interested in. I mentioned you are the expert of you, the world's #1 expert on you. And so what better for you to inform us on than yourself? So they would start with that one. And part of it was they didn't have a choice. They got put into a situation where their choice was, I have to do what this class requires of me, or I take a failing grade. And college is expensive and you don't want a failing grade, Because if you don't pass public speaking at our school, you didn't graduate. It was a required class. So in that regard, part of overcoming it is making it mandatory. That's why I encourage people to tell somebody else what you're going to do to get started on that path. Because if you do, you're holding yourself accountable. Now, as I mentioned, this was one of the things that I liked most about it, because I would see somebody at the beginning of the semester and they would get up to speak and they were terrified. I saw people faint. I saw people freeze up. I saw people cry. I saw people get sick because of the fear when they got up in front of the class. And just a few weeks later, they were in front of the class speaking like they belonged in front of a crowd. Usually, once you hit that first step and realize that even in the tears and the shaking and the fainting and the feeling sick to your stomach, that when you survived that, it's like, I can do it again. Maybe I didn't make it the full 2 minutes, but I made it 30 seconds. Can I make it 45 seconds the next time? Can I make it a full minute? So it's all about hitting that first hurdle and really just saying, I have to put myself in a situation where I don't have a choice but to do it. And once you get through that first fear hurdle, you'll find that the rest of them get much easier. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much.
Outstanding. Well, hey, looky there. It's 7:45. We got this done in about the amount of time that I thought it would take for us to do it. If there are any other questions, I will be happy to entertain them. All right, here's a little trick, a final note when it comes to public speaking and asking if there are questions. Your brain, excuse me, my eye itches. That wasn't distracting at all, right? Your brain can take up to 8 seconds to formulate an answer to an unexpected question. So keep that in mind. Your brain can take up to 8 seconds to formulate an answer to an unexpected question. So I bet when you go back to the recording, I didn't even wait 8 seconds before I started moving on. But I also didn't change the subject, so that if somebody did come up with that question, I still gave them time to do it where it wouldn't feel like, oh, well, I'm already signing off and that needs to be the end of it. It takes about 3 to 4 seconds for the silence to become awkward. That was 4 seconds. Started to get a little awkward. That was 8 seconds. Wow, that was really awkward. You almost probably thought my camera was freezing up, but it wasn't. So just keep that in mind, that if you're in that situation where you know you just asked a question that they weren't expecting, give them that 8 seconds to come up with it, even if it means breaking the awkward silence without changing the subject. Thank you again so much for your time. Thank you for your questions. And I hope we can do this again where maybe we'll actually start putting into practice some of those public speaking skills that you need to learn.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Jimmy, for presenting for us tonight. We greatly appreciate you and your time.
Thank you so much. It was absolutely my pleasure to do it.
You all have a wonderful evening, and I hope that I see you back next week.
Take care.
Bye.